Autism is a neurological disorder that affects about 1 in 66 to 68 kids in America today. In 1950, that number was 1 in 10,000. Now, why this discrepancy? The 1 in 66 is probably a bit high. And the reason I say that is, I've seen a whole bunch of really what amounts to piss poor parenting. And we've ignored this kid basically, more or less his entire life. And now he doesn't respond to us. Well, if you go to the doctor enough and keep going to a doctor and you don't get the diagnosis you want, you just go to another doctor. Eventually you'll get the diagnosis you want. I mean, modern medicine could probably diagnose me as a redheaded woman given enough chances. They'll give you what you want to hear sooner or later. I'm definitely not saying that autism is not a real disorder. What I am saying is that the numbers are skewed. Now, the 1 in 10,000 number from 1950, I guarantee you there was a whole bunch of misdiagnoses, I don't know. Or the doctor smoking a cigarette in the room with the patient says mentally retarded. Take him home, need care his whole life, or you can institutionalize her. Take your pick. There's hundreds of books probably by now written on autism. Two really good ones that I want to steer you toward. One of them is called Thinking in Pictures, My Life with Autism by Temple Grandin. Temple Grandin is one of the leading authorities on autism. She is autistic. And interestingly, she credits her aunt for kind of rescuing her. When she was very young, her aunt wouldn't leave her be and basically locked her in her bedroom and just kept getting in her space and wouldn't let her drift off and daydream and go into this other world that autistic people seem to want to reside in. Now we come to the second book. It's called A Miracle to Believe In by Barry Kaufman. These people in the 1970s had an autistic child. Autism, mentally retarded, gonna require care their whole life, probably institutionalize them. And they wouldn't accept that for an answer. So primarily the wife, the husband was working, although he did a lot of it too, locked them and their son inside a bathroom 8, 10, 12 hours a day. And every time the boy drifted off, every time he started to daydream and get in that world that autistic people like to kind of reside in, they got in his space. What are you doing? What do you look? Just this constant interruption. Come back to us. Come back to us. They were going to rescue their son. And they did. Their son, now a grown man, has lived a very productive life. What's really interesting about, they have a program, the Autism Treatment Center of America. It's also called the Sunrise Program, S-O-N, Sunrise. I'm not trying to tell you where to spend your money, but we have GoFundMes for everything from traffic tickets to trumped up legal cases and going to visit the National Committee. If you want to donate some money, the Sunrise Program might be something you want to look into. It is not cheap. They've been operating out of Sheffield, Massachusetts, I believe, since 1983. They have a full program now. I do not think that insurance covers this, and it is not cheap. What's some of the therapies for autism? There is therapy. Early intervention is key. The earlier you can get there and start this rescue, for lack of a better term, the better your chances are of pulling a child kind of out of autism. My terminology isn't going to be the best. I am not a medical doctor. I'll be the first one to admit it. But I'll also tell you that I'm not just talking out of my hat. I have a son who is, for lack of a better term, severely autistic. So there are therapies now where they can reach an autistic child. The difficulty with that, you really need to be in there about age 2 or earlier. The difficulty being A child doesn't fully start getting the words going until, what, 1.5? So you really got to be on the ball. And in the case of myself and my son, the signs were there. And to my ex-wife's credit, my then wife, she worked very, very hard and diligently for many years trying to rescue our son. I, on the other hand, number one, a little bit shrugged it off. First child, you know, some kids don't talk a whole lot until they become zero. I knew some people with a girl, and that girl didn't hardly say 50 words from the time she was born till she was 7. Now you can't shut her up. Ignorance, a little bit of denial. I don't want my son to be disabled. I don't want my son to have some label on him that people will use as a crutch for him his whole life. Once you get that label, you know, oh, it's the autism talking. It's a difficult line to walk. I do take a certain amount of responsibility for not getting him all the help he could have had earlier on. The Sunrise program, there's a DVD you can get. I don't remember if it costs anything or not. It doesn't matter. If so, it's nominal. But they have filmed these children, and it's a training for parents and the child of this intervention, nonstop intervention. And they film these kids when they show up, aloof, distant, hanging out in that space that I talked about earlier. And then some of these kids, they have quite a success rate. Some of these kids they talked to after the fact and interviewed them. And they all kind of said the same thing. It's like I was in a dream. I didn't really want to be in the dream or far off, but I was comfortable there and I knew it. Anything with a change that you and I or a healthy individual might see as just part of everyday life, which it is, the autistic brain sometimes can't move past it. And nobody seems to know why that is. There's some kind of disconnect. Also, reasoning, logic seem to be either absent or dormant in the autistic brain. The trouble with that is, just because someone thinks differently does not mean they are less. So there are therapies. There are methods of intervention where you can, Jenny McCarthy the actress, has an autistic son, or had, perhaps. Now she's got the money, and she's got the time, and she can bring in the specialists. And she spent an awful lot of time and effort rescuing her son to a pretty good amount of success. It's not cheap, this therapy. You're talking around $100 an hour. And how much therapy do they need? The more, the better. Probably between 40 and 60 hours a week. How much will Medicaid pay for? 2 hours per week. That's it. The trouble with that is, what's cheaper? A larger upfront cost to rescue the kid? Or a lifetime of care? Because someone will have to raise these children once they are grown for the rest of their lives. When people like me are gone, dead and gone, my son will still need care. One of the few and greatest fears of my life. I'm not a guy who's scared of much of anything. But a massive concern of mine is after I'm gone. Now, at that time, I'll be dead. It won't matter. But my son will still be here. So what happens if there's no one there for him? Or what happens if my friends who are willing to step in and assume responsibility for him, what happens when they're dead? Well, he goes to a home. What happens to a nonverbal young man, mostly nonverbal, who can't communicate well if he's abused or neglected or drugged? Where's his voice? Who's going to speak for him? Imagine the rest of your life that way. The trouble with that is they took the Marisol out of the vaccines after so many complaints. If it was so safe, Why'd you take it out? The subject might be worth looking into because you probably know or have a child with autism, or know somebody who does, your cousin, your sister's nephew, I don't even know. Somebody has it. It used to be almost unheard of. It was just that quiet, oh, they have the disabled child, the quiet kid that you never see, he never comes outside. That's those people. It's almost unheard of. Now it's almost commonplace. Why? And furthermore, what happens when an entire nation of these autistic young people by then have to live in regular society that all of us seem to take for granted? It might be worth looking into. I do thank you for your time. I thank you for watching. I don't want anybody smashing the like button. If you want to gently caress it, it'd be great. It helps the channel to grow, along with a share with the arrow thing. Your comments are appreciated, and I will see you next time.